In the last couple of years, I met a lot of young artists who told me that they want to start drawing comics, but they don't know how to start and they feel it very overwhelming and difficult, and they kind of keep thinking about it but never starting. And I was thinking about it, and because I've drawn many comics, I kind of came up with these 3 tips to give an artist for their first comic project. So, tip number 1, keep it short and simple. Usually, when you're especially a younger artist, you have this massive story in your head that has a lot of characters, a lot of lore. And this story is so huge that it's probably going to be like 10 chapters or like 400 pages. And you are really passionate about it and really interested, and you love the characters and you're just so into it. But the idea to start drawing something that would be so big and you've never drawn comics is just way too overwhelming. So my advice is, for your first project, just short and simple. Choose like 20 or 30 pages story. It can be a story that is part of this bigger story that you have in mind, with the same characters or some of them. But it should be like a completed short story with these characters. And what I mean by simple is that don't put all of the backstories and all of the lore in this story. Usually we don't need to know that much. We just need to see who the few main characters are and what's their deal, and then some obstacles happen and they overcome them, and something like that. Something very simple, We don't need to know all the massive lore behind it because it's a short story. And why I am advising on a short story rather than starting the 10 chapter one is that it's just so much more satisfying and good for your motivation to have a finished project. The same amount of time that you will draw this 20-page story that is completed will be the amount of time that you draw 20 pages for the 400-page story. But that would mean that you have so much more still left to do from this project. And believe me, that crushes your motivation when you see that you have so much more work to do. It will be very challenging to create a comic. So why not have a project that is much more manageable and simple? You will feel really satisfied when you have a completed story that you can show to people and say like, this is my first comic, than to have like 20 pages from a story that needs 380 more pages and be like, oh yeah, I started the comic, but it's not really finished yet, and I don't know when I will finish it because I have a lot of work. Okay, tip number 2. Assuming you take my first advice and make a 20-page story, tip number 2 is the following. When you create a drawing or a comic, it doesn't matter, you usually go through 3 different stages. First is sketching, a sketch of the drawing or comic page. Second is the inking. So it's cleaning the lines, basically. It's the black outlines, usually. Of course, not everybody draws with outlines, but this is the general look of comics, so I'm using this as an example. And the third is shading and coloring. My tip number 2 is create all of the sketches for the full story before doing anything else. So if you have 20 pages of story, create all of them, the 20 sketches, with all the panels inside, with all the characters, with everything that happens. Have those 20 pages sketched out, and then you can proceed to cleaning the lines, coloring, shading, whatever you have in mind. Like a small tip regarding this is, I would recommend for your first comic to try to make it only black and white, because it will be much faster. It looks really cool, really awesome, and it's not like in any way lesser than color. But it's just so much more simple. It can be also complicated, of course. I'm not saying it's easy, but colors can add a lot of questions to your artwork. And I would recommend for a first comic to just try it black and white. But in any case, do all the sketches first. When you see the whole story sketched out, every page till the end. It's like you're holding it in your hand, by the coloring stage or cleaning lines or whatever. You feel like it doesn't look like the way you want it to, and that can make you, doubt the project and kind of give up. But with the sketches stage, it's just less pressure because you don't really see it completed. You just see it sketched out. And in your head, you can think like, oh, it will be so much better when I clean the lines and everything. So you can just focus on the story. The sketch doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be. And perfection can really kill your motivation. If you think it's not coming out as perfect as you want to be, that can kill your motivation. That leads me to tip number 3. And tip number 3 is just do it. Don't think if it's going to be good or not, if it's going to be perfect or not, how it's going to look, what will people think. Once you start to put too much pressure on yourself to make it perfect, this can paralyze you. Believe me, that happened to me many times. Many times. Remember, this is your first comic. This is your first project. Of course, it's not going to be perfect. It's not even probably going to be that good, as they say. But actually, it's going to be so precious and so important because it's a big learning experience. Everything you draw is a step forward in your artist development. And you have to go through the mistakes. You have to go through the questions and even the failures. You have to go through that because that's how you learn. It's an important part of learning. Book reading is another part. You can research how to do stuff and everything. But before you start really drawing and trying yourself, you will not really have the real experience of creating this and meeting the problems that arise with creating a comic. You just have to start. Don't think about it too much. Don't put pressure on yourself that it has to be perfect or it has to be great or it has to be amazing or you have to impress someone. Don't do that. Do this project for yourself. And you will see that it will actually be pretty cool. And you will feel much more confident by completing this project. Really, don't think about it. Just start drawing. The truth is, your first project, you will make a lot of mistakes. Your second project probably also. But by the third project, you will have learned a lot. And by the 10th project, you will have learned really a lot. And if you never start, you will never get to the 10th project. Just do it. You can do it. Art is for everybody. Everyone can be an artist. And with each drawn frame, with each drawn page, you learn. Okay, those are my 3 tips for creating your first comic. Thank you for listening. Bye.